Right, and welcome back, everyone. I'm going to quickly summarize what we've talked about. We have discussed Bitcoin as a contractual offer, the importance of contract law, tort law, as some might know it, the who is the issuer, the distributor. We have compared BSB to BTC and Ethereum somewhat. We have discussed the value of issuance and the continued distribution and obligations therein of contract. We briefly discussed about contractual law into the future, 2140 and beyond, which might be an interesting subject for another discussion. We have talked heavily about GDPR, identity, personal data processing, and the controller of such information. And we have talked about storage limitation in regards to GDPR, and also rectification and erasure. And then we want to discuss data breaches and security and various ways in which using Bitcoin helps with emails, with valuation costs, and identity as well, with regards to identity fraud, theft, and similar identity-related crimes. So over to Michael, who has a summary question for Craig.
Well, since we have some minutes left here, Craig, I would like you to tell us a bit about the moral reasons for you to have created Bitcoin. And you have touched these things with Ryan already in the Theory of Bitcoin series. You have talked about Adam Smith, and I think Ryan is reading Adam Smith at the moment publicly on YouTube, if I recall correctly. So maybe you can tell us about all of that a little bit.
So where people go wrong in their understanding of free markets is that freedom isn't libertine. Libertine is different to free. So a libertine view of life is that there's no responsibility. There is always moral responsibility when you're talking about freedom. Now, in that, we can't have contracts without the ability to have people obliged. In a contract, you're making a promise, and a promise is always morally obliged. You may have to pay rectification if you don't go through something with something. You may have to return the money. You may have to do some other act. But the fact of the matter is that obligations come with contracts by nature. So what we need in Bitcoin is a methodology of a contractual system that ensures that people can be honest. We minimize fraud. We minimize the ability for people to, well, do malicious activities, do bad things, so to speak. And that was really what it was about. Remember, prior to Bitcoin, I came from a background where I was working for an accounting firm developing audit techniques. So I worked doing forensics, not just computer forensics like people do now, but accounting forensics. So actually creating software and techniques, DATS, digital audit technology, and CATS, computer-aided audit techniques, to analyze statistically and definitively all of the information that would occur over accounting systems and look for signs of fraud. So people don't realize this, but there's a CRAN package called R, which is an open source statistical package. And as part of my early statistics training, my master's in statistics I did, one of the things I did was I wrote a package for the R statistical language for Benford's law, which I've talked about many times. Benford's law is basically a system of analyzing transactions, because most people don't understand how transactions are ordered. There's always more ones than there are nines, and it's in a power law form of transaction. And when people try and do things like doctoring the books, what you start to find is that the sequence of how numbers naturally occur and how people believe they occur are two different things. So you can start actually analyzing statistically to find differences in values. Have people been skimming? Have people been rounding? And all of those seem small to people, but we found that sometimes there'd be 4 or 5% of the profitability of a firm could be lost in lots of small things, like someone skimming from the till, or someone making false invoices, or rounding up, or doing any of these other things that fraudsters and money launderers do. And having the information there in a form that would be analyzed and able to be sort of reviewed, including real time. This is one of the key aspects of what I thought. With a system like Bitcoin, we could have it private because you wouldn't know who to and from the transactions are involved with are going. You could have a system that audit firms could actually view live, real time, and they could start viewing discrepancies, not a year down the track when they're doing an audit, but they could flag things and say, we need to review this transaction. It's going to a funky site. It's for a contract that seems overpriced. It's for, it seems to be rounded wrong. The till from this operator always happens to be rounded more towards nines and whatever else, as if they're skimming. So all that information would be viable and processable in real time, which would save especially small businesses a lot of money. And that allows them to compete on a more equal footing. So right now, large businesses do this. They can afford KPMG and Ernst & Young to come in there and find all this stuff and spend huge amounts of money. And one of the things I used to hate when I was working with BDO and doing this work is the small guys couldn't afford us. They couldn't, they just couldn't justify it, even when it sometimes saved them more money. Getting them to spend the money to do this in the first place was problematic. So something where we could lower the cost and just open something like that up as a service to everyone, I think would be incredibly valuable. And keeping people honest and making sure that you don't have cheating employees or suppliers that are sort of not paying the tax that they're meant to, and all this, it's fair is the only way to put it. And if everyone has to work in a system that's fair, I think it's a much better world.
Yeah, Craig, if we live in a Bitcoin world that you imagined when you created it, or let's say in 20 years or whatever, we have a system that, like you said, forces people to be truthful, and even bigger players. But where is the part where we actually work on the character of people? Because
well, Bitcoin that's completely people outside of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin.
I know. I'm just trying to say that.
If I may,
if this works out, yeah, sure.
Bitcoin is a tool. It's a tool of light, and we don't say that just to like be dramatic, but it's like, as what Craig just said, you can see everything that's happening. You can shine a torch on it, basically. And what that enables as a tool is politicians who want to be fairer, have their society run fairer. They can use such a tool to show their dealings, their political intakes, their political outgoings, their own personal intakes, whether they're getting bribed or whether they're not getting bribed. And they can use such a tool to gain the trust. And the population would then vote for someone who's using such tools. Say, look, I'm using honest, legit systems. I'm not playing
Yeah,
the silly
everyone can audit where the money in my fund comes from. My electoral fund. This is it. This is how much I'm getting paid. Yes, I've managed to get a lot more than you, but that's because these guys really support me. That sort of thing. No, I'm not really siphoning money off into my own thing because, well, that yacht looks really good. So
maybe it's safe to say that Bitcoin will help humanity, but not save humanity.
Only people can save people in that way. So we have to work within the existing world and use the tools we have and act morally ourselves. Now, it comes down to the old ring of Gyges bit that I've pointed out many times. If things are secret, then people act in bad ways. We want people, I mean, we should have people acting openly. And if people are acting openly and not hiding things, then we can discuss what they're doing and society can decide what is and isn't acceptable. I mean, I have my own personal views. I'm Christian. That makes me hated by everyone in Silicon Valley practically. But the reality here is maybe everyone won't agree with my values, but we should openly debate those values. So
yeah, Craig, kind of a personal question on that one, and you don't have to answer, of course. You just said only humans can save humans. And as a Christian, I'm myself a Christian. So I'm wondering that sentence, only we can save ourselves. Does humanity need a savior or not?
That's a deep question. So yes, we do. And if you want to get into the theology of that, I believe that I'm not a fundamentalist. I don't believe that that's an accurate perception of Christianity. I don't believe God has to act within confinements of how people have written things down. But equally, I believe he acts through individuals, and sort of the only way we have eternal salvation is through the actions of seeking forgiveness, and that we're all going to sin and we're all going to do naughty things and all of that sort of stuff. But that's a different question. That's sort of the cosmic justice level and what happens after we die. I'm more thinking about how do we personally steward ourselves to a better world. And stewardship's a big component of Christianity. We don't own this world, we're given control of it. The world is ours, but as in the parable of the good servant, we are expected to work hard to make it better. And if you want to dive into that one, the parable is basically the three servants, and one invested here, one invested there, and this one dug a hole and just put the money in the ground and lazed around and did nothing. And that's bad. I mean, sitting there not building, not creating is bad. We're here to make something of what we're given. We're here to make the world a better place. That's what stewards do. Not that it's my money, it's someone else's money, and I'm acting to grow it, to make it more than it was. I have a fiduciary duty over what I've inherited in the world, so to speak. And I think that's a critical aspect of what people need to consider when they're acting. We're leaving something for future generations. Now, as humans, it is our job on this planet to work to make better societies, to make better interactions, to make better government, to make better policies, and to reduce crime, to reduce all the injustices that are done. Now, that doesn't mean...
Totally. Yeah. I get that totally. Just another question, and this will go deep, but the things you have mentioned, making this world a better place, as a Christian, I would have to ask, isn't that what the enemy would also say?
No, because I don't think they're making it better. So when you're arguing, I mean, remember that we're all individuals. As a Christian, you've got to note that each of us has an individual worth and value. You have value just because you are you. That gives you a fundamental right that cannot be taken. And I think that's a big difference that many non-Christian groups don't actually have. There is an absolute right because you are human. And that cannot be bypassed for any argument. No sort of utilitarian or deontological argument or whatever else over it's better for society. So if you read, say, John Rawls has a theory of justice. In that, he says, we can redistribute if it makes the worst and best off in a better place. But if we think about that for a moment, it becomes rather arbitrary without God. Why can't we take from another human? I mean, going, oh, but because we're people, we can't do that. Well, that doesn't mean anything without going further. So if I say God has said we're sacrosanct, then that is an absolute. Whereas if I go, well, I can't see why it would be better. Well, I can sit there and go, well, I need an operation. I've got one kidney and it's failing. You're young and active and you've got 2 healthy kidneys and we're compatible. I think redistributive justice means you should give me your kidney because you don't really need 2. I mean, you can live a very healthy, active life with 1 kidney. So you should give me your kidney.
This is where I run
No,
away.
thank you.
Right,
I mean,
I'm gonna
see what I'm saying there? That becomes rather
Yeah.
problematic very quickly without sort of the fundamental, you're human, you have an absolute right. We can go down a very slippery slope, and I'll throw that in not as a fallacy, but actually this is how a lot of totalitarian governments justify things. How Stalin justified, Trotsky, Lenin, how Hitler, how existing third world countries with dictators justify things. It's in the good of the whole of community. We're going to sacrifice you. But the first thing has to be the individual. And if the individual has their own, sorry, you can't do that, you have to convince me, not you can force me, then that's a very different scenario.
What about pride in all of this, Craig? Because pride is. Oh, do we still have time left, or?
I can talk for a little bit longer.
Right, but yeah, go on then.
Yeah, because we're totally in the Christian thing here now. But allow me this question: where comes pride into play in all of this, Craig? Because pride is like the characteristics of the enemy. And if we talk about humans making this world a better place and the individual first, we're not putting God first then. If we say the individual first, that could be in conflict with believing in God. Just a question.
No, I don't disagree. I understand what you're saying, but remember we were given unique rights as individuals and made in image of the Creator. So no other has rights over our body. Now, that's a difference between someone being able to act on you and you having obligations. So I believe as a steward, it's not my whatever, it's my duty. I have a duty to actually ensure that if I have intelligence, I use it. I don't just sit on my ass and, as you said, go off to the island.
I get that. Yeah.
So I've been given gifts, not so that I can squander them or waste them, but to create with them. So if I have more gifts than other people, I have more obligations than other people. And does that mean that I have to do something because you say it? No, but that is my personal choice. I have my own sort of obligations, and I have to interpret that knowing that that's how I get judged on. How I judge others, how I interact with others is how I will be judged at the end. I'm not really Calvinist, but I like some of the concepts about going out there and working hard and whatever else. I don't believe, though, that I've worked harder than you, so that shows I'm one of the select. That bit I don't like. I think we're all obliged to work, but we have to judge that ourselves. So I can't sit there and say, look, I think you're doing things wrong. I don't have the right to do that. I mean, that's the whole purpose of judge not lest you be judged. I have to judge myself. I have to consider how I am interacting, and I have to be okay with what I'm doing, and I have to feel confident that I'm doing the right thing. And unfortunately, there are some sociopaths out there that will sit there and go, I'm doing whatever the hell I want and it's good. But I can't answer to that one. It's not my specialty.
Okay, thank you for answering the personal questions.
You're welcome.
Right, okay, well, I'm going to end this then. Thank you very much, Dr. Craig Wright, creator of Bitcoin, otherwise known as Satoshi Nakamoto. And thank you very much, Michael, for hosting. I'm sure this all went along okay. Brilliant.
No problem.
Thank you.